for donations and so forth. There is no line drawn there. But when they step into the Oval Office, they think they're president. I mean, it really changes the whole...
Have you seen them change that way as you watched them over the years?
Pardon?
Have you seen them change that way as you've watched over the years?
From the minute they step into the Oval Office, there's something that happens. They're transformed. Information suddenly becomes their private preserve that I believe belongs in the public domain. So there's an immediate adversarial process there.
And I know you've both been asked this a million times, but tell us your favorite. Who are your favorite presidents in your years in Washington?
Kennedy. Kennedy, because he was the most inspired. I thought that he understood that his time was short. He had this whole rendezvous with death, I believe, because he had a bad illness. And he knew he had been to war. He was a man of peace. He created the Peace Corps, signed the first nuclear test ban treaty, set goals, told young people to go into public service, that it could be the crown of their careers. He said, we're going to land men on the moon in a decade. Didn't live to see it, but we did it. And I told this story before, but many times, but he invited the first class of astronauts and their wives to the White House for a mix and mingle and for light supper. And during the mix and mingle, he asked the astronauts, do you think we could land on the moon? They said, sure, absolutely. You never say no to a president, as I said. When they left, they said, is this guy nuts? Is he crazy? Land on the moon? So, no, he set tremendous goals.
You know, Helen brings up a very interesting point about how the Oval Office, it doesn't just change presidents. It changes people who come to see the president. And one of the reasons that it is good for presidents to have news conferences and to take questions from reporters is, in many cases, it becomes the only way that they come in contact with reality. Stop and think about it. Everybody who comes to the White House gets through the gate because, in essence, the president has invited them there. They either want something for the president or they want to support the president in some ways. So I have always said that the Oval Office is the single best place in Washington to become divorced from reality. Because you only see the people that you've invited in to see you, with the exception of the reporters. You have the whole federal government at your disposal. Right. And I've seen it time again. People think, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell the president this or that. And I remember our old friend Peter Lisagor of the Chicago Daily News said, they're going in there to really lay down the law to the president, and then they walk in that Oval Office and they go, gah, 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 gah. You know, and it should be that way. I mean, we should revere the presidency. I mean, it is the center and the symbol of the American government. But having said that, it is very difficult sometimes for presidents to get a real perspective on what's happening or what's really going on out there. The second part, to answer your question, my favorite president is Gerald Ford, who was just truly the nicest, one of the nicest people I've ever met. He was so kind to us. He was used to being around reporters. I'll never forget once when, and he was human. You could tease him, you could have fun with him. I had many, disagreements with him as far as politics and things like that. But he's just a good guy. And some people are, and some people aren't. And so I have to say he was my favorite. The politician that had the most impact on me was the first one I ever knew about, and that was Lyndon Johnson, who, when I was 10 years old, he was running for the United States Senate down in Texas, and we heard that he was coming to the vacant lot where we played baseball out on the north side of Fort Worth. And the reason we all went down to see him is because he was coming, we heard he was coming in a helicopter, and we'd never seen a helicopter. And I'll never forget that moment as long as I live. I mean, we're all down there and up in the sky. Here's this airplane with no wings. We'd never seen anything like it. And then on this bullhorn, this is your candidate for the United States Senate. We knew how Moses felt when he realized that burning bush talking to him. We didn't know if it was Lyndon Johnson or God or what. We just, it terrified us. And he came down and made this great speech. At the end of it, he wore his hat all through the speech, took his hat off, threw it out into the crowd, and then got on the helicopter and grandly flew away. Well, many years later, I told this story to Jake Pickle, who's, Helen will remember, a longtime congressman from Austin. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, that was my job in the campaign. And I said, what? He said, I was the hat catcher. And I said, what? He said, let me tell you, Lyndon Johnson was the tightest man on the face of the earth. Said he was not going to waste a hat on a political rally. He said, my job was to drive to that place, wherever the helicopter lands, get on the front row. And he said, then when Lyndon saw me, he'd throw the hat to me. I'd run around behind the helicopter and give it back to him, and he'd fly off. And, we haven't seen those kinds of rallies and that kind of just showmanship until this campaign last year, when again we began to see public rallies. In those days, politicians had to be entertaining. They had to have a message to hold a crowd, and somehow that had all just kind of drifted away because of the emphasis on television commercials. But one of the things I'm glad to say that changed in last year's campaign, we began to see these candidates get out into the communities and draw crowds. And once Obama started doing it, John McCain started to draw big crowds. People, on all sides of the issues, they kind of like going out and seeing the candidates. And I think that was a good thing.
Security to Fitz.
Yeah.
I campaigned with Ford when he was running for election for the first time. He was president, and we went